Hello and welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike, and today our video is an exploration of ethics. How should we live? So, ethics is one of the most practical and impactful branches of philosophy. Ethics asks, what is the right thing to do, and how should we live our lives? And these questions aren't just academic. They guide our personal decisions, shape our societies, and influence laws and policies. So today's agenda with this video is to explore what is ethics. We're going to have a look at three major ethical theories: utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. And we are going to examine how we apply ethics to real world dilemmas. So, ethics is the study of morality, principles of right and wrong. And it's divided into three key areas: meta-ethics, so what is morality? Is it objective or subjective? Normative ethics, what makes an action right or wrong? And applied ethics, how do we resolve real-world moral dilemmas? Ethics isn't about abstract ideas alone, and philosophers love abstraction. It can seem sometimes when you read philosophers that what they're talking about is far removed from lived experience because they do love an abstraction. But ethics ethics defies that, because ethics applies to us all of the time with every decision we make. And we all do a bit of philosophizing around ethics, and we do that every moment of every day, but we may not be quite sort of aware of it on a surface level. So ethics is it's how we make decisions. So should we eat meat? Is lying ever acceptable? And so on. These are questions that we all have all of the time, and ethical theories give us the tools that we need to be able to answer these questions. So what is a moral dilemma that you have faced recently? I want you to have a think about it. What is a moral dilemma that you have faced recently, and how did you decide what to do? I want you to in a moment pause the video and jump in the comments and answer that question. So what's a moral dilemma that you faced recently, and how did you decide what to do? So pause the video, jump in the comments with that, and I look forward to reading your responses. So pause the video now. And you're back again. Excellent. So, did you do it? Did you answer that question? What's a moral dilemma that you faced recently, and how did you decide what to do? So now that we have had an opportunity to essentially define what ethics is, let's go deeper. Let's look at some of the major ethical theories that exist. So we're going to look at utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. Now, utilitarianism is an idea that has been sort of spearheaded by people like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. And the core idea of utilitarianism is actions are right if they maximize happiness for the greatest number of people. Another way of sort of framing that utilitarian perspective or point of view is it can be found in Star Trek. So if you're old like me, you'll remember Mr. Spock from the original series. And Mr. Spock used to say, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So Spock was utilitarianist. And yeah, so that sort of encapsulates that idea that actions are right if they maximize happiness for the greatest number of people. And utilitarianism is what we call a results-based theory. Bentham introduced the idea of what did he call it? The hedonic calculus. That's what he called it. And what that is an attempt to measure pleasure and pain. And John Stuart Mill heard that idea or read that idea, and he liked it, but he felt it wasn't quite correct. It wasn't quite there. So he refined it. And in his efforts to refine it, he emphasized higher pleasures like intellectual fulfillment over things like physical pleasures. And there is a thought experiment from from utilitarianism that we're going to look at, and we're going to look at it again against the backdrop of deontology and virtue ethics as well. So we call that experiment, that thought experiment, the trolley problem. So in the trolley problem, you have a trolley, train, whatever you want to call it, right? It's on a track, hurtling down the track. There's no way to stop it. And on the track ahead of it is 5 people tied to the tracks. They can't move, they can't get away, you can't untie them, and so on. They are going to get turned into pancake and soup. And you are, as an observer, only able to do one thing, which is pull a lever, which will divert that trolley, that train, onto another track. Now you might be thinking at this point, huzzah, problem solved. We can save the 5 people by diverting the train. But the problem is that when the train gets diverted onto that other track, there is another person. Just one, but nonetheless, there is another person attached to that track. They're tied down, can't move, you can't get them out, and so on and so forth. All the same rules apply to that one as they do the 5. So that one is going to get turned into mush on the tracks by the train. So what would a utilitarian do in this situation? Would they pull the lever and sacrifice the 1 to save the 5, or would they do nothing and allow the 5 to perish? So at this point, I want you to pause the video and I want you to jump in the comments and let me know, what do you think the utilitarian would do in this situation? Would they pull the lever and divert the train and therefore sacrifice the 1 in order to save the 5, or would they do nothing and allow the 5 to perish? So pause the video and I will be here upon your return. So pause the video now. And you're back again. Excellent. So now that you've jumped in the comments with your answer to that question, we can move on and look at deontology. Now, deontology is an idea put forward by Immanuel Kant. And the core idea, essentially, is that actions are right if they follow moral rules and duties, or duties rather, regardless of consequences. So actions are right if they follow moral rules or duties, regardless of consequences. So deontology focuses on principles. Kant argued that morality is based on reason, not emotion, and introduced the categorical imperative, which is like a universal moral law. And Kant put it this way: act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So to put that more sort of in a way that is, simple and makes sense, basically in modern speech, but what Kant was getting at essentially is that if you do an action, then everyone else should be able to do it too. So if it's right for you, if it's the right thing for you in that situation, then it should be the right thing for everyone in that situation. So in the trolley problem, in the trolley dilemma, Kant would likely argue that pulling the lever is wrong because it treats one person as a means to an end. So Kant would essentially argue in favor of inaction. And so that is deontology in a nutshell, so to speak. So let's have a look now at Aristotle's virtue ethics. So virtue ethics focus in virtue ethics the focus isn't on actions. Instead, the focus is put on character. A good life is one of virtue, leading to human flourishing, or what Aristotle called eudaimonia. Now, I will say that eudaimonia doesn't quite mean, well, it does mean human flourishing, but it doesn't quite directly translate into that. There is no sort of direct translation for eudaimonia, so human flourishing is the best we can do in English. So you will hear a lot of people talk about this, and they would just use Aristotle's word, eudaimonia, and that's why, because it doesn't directly translate into English all that well, but human flourishing about covers it. So virtue ethics asks, what kind of a person should I be? Instead of rigid rules, Aristotle proposed the doctrine of the mean, which emphasizes balance. So, to hopefully explain that in a way that makes sense, let's use an example. So, according to Aristotle, courage is a virtue that exists between the extremes of recklessness and cowardice. Courage is the balance between recklessness and cowardice. So hopefully that sort of makes sense. So let's go back to the trolley problem. In the trolley problem, virtue ethics would ask, what would a virtuous person, so someone who is wise, kind, and courageous, what would a virtuous person do? Would they pull the lever or would they not? This, I think, is a good point, a good place to pause the video and jump in the comments and answer that question. I'd be interested to see your responses. Pause the video and I will see you in a moment. So, did you do it? Did you answer the question? Well, I hope so. So next, now that we've sort of explored some of the a couple of the big ideas, the big theories in ethics, let's look at how we apply that to real world dilemmas. And for the sake of example, we're going to apply these three different theories to a global ethical issue. And I've picked climate change. I picked climate change because ethically it's a difficult one, but we all have some understanding of what climate change is and what it means and so on and so forth. So I don't have to spend, hours on end explaining that. We can just use the example. So that's why I've picked climate change as the example. So we're going to apply these different theories, these ethical theories to climate change. And we're going to get specific with the situation. So suppose that you are deciding whether or not to take a flight to go on holiday or vacation if you're American. So let's look at the ethical perspectives on flying. So, according to, and I know I keep saying so, sorry about that. According to utilitarianism, flying flying contributes to climate change, which long term harms millions. So, the utilitarian perspective would be to avoid the flight. In deontology, if harming the environment violates a moral rule, then you avoid the flight regardless of the impact. And in virtue ethics, a virtuous person would show restraint and prioritize sustainability. Does that make sense? I hope so. So now I have a little exercise that I want you to do, and I want you to, once I've gone through it, I want you to pause the video and jump in the comments with your response to this exercise, to this question, this exercise, whatever you want to call it. So, which theory do you find most persuasive in this case, and why? So remember, climate change is a global ethical issue, and you are going to take a flight to go, to another country on holiday or vacation, or whatever you want to call it. So the utilitarian perspective is that flying contributes to climate change and therefore harms millions, so you should avoid the flight. The deontological perspective is that if harming the environment violates a moral rule, then avoid the flight regardless of the impact. And virtue ethics, that perspective would be that a virtuous person would show restraint and prioritize sustainability. So which of the theories do you find most persuasive in this case, and why? So jump in the comments and let me know. I look forward to reading those responses. So pause the video now. Excellent. You're back again. I really look forward to reading your responses, your answers to that question about whether about which theory you find most persuasive and why. So now we're going to move on to another sort of example to apply some what's the word I'm looking for? To apply some I can't speak today. To apply ethics to. So I'm stuttering and stumbling all over the place. Forgive me. So this time we're going to look at lying to protect someone. So let's consider that, and this is a classical moral dilemma. Should you lie to protect someone? For example, if you're hiding a friend from danger and someone asked if they were there, would you lie? So using the three different ethical frameworks or theories, we can look at this situation. So from the utilitarian perspective, lying is acceptable if it minimizes harm. From the perspective of deontology, lying is wrong because it violates a moral rule. And in virtue ethics, the perspective is that a virtuous person would probably balance honesty with compassion. So now I have an exercise for you. Now, if you are lucky enough to have someone there with you while you're going through this, then you are at somewhat of an advantage. But if not, jump in the comments and hopefully someone can tag in and get a discussion going, right? So what I want you to do essentially is to argue for and against each of the ethical perspectives in this particular scenario. So the scenario, if you remember, is that you're hiding a friend from danger and someone asked if they were there, would you lie? So I want you to argue for and against each of the three different ethical perspectives on lying. And I also want you to go through the comments and find someone else's argument for or against or whatever, and I want you to argue with them. I'm going to say argue with them. I know we're on the internet, but I mean properly argue like an adult, not, you know, trolls on social media kind of arguing. Proper arguments. Thoughtful, intellectual arguments. So yeah, have a think about the different perspectives on this situation and argue for and against each of those different perspectives, and find someone that you agree with and find someone you disagree with, and so on and so forth. Right. Do all that. Pause the video. I will be right here. And you're back again. Excellent. So, did you do that? I very much look forward to reading through all these comments and the answers to all these questions and so on and so forth. So thank you very much for your participation. So ethics gives us tools to navigate complex moral decisions. Utilitarianism focuses on consequences. Deontology on principles rather, and virtue ethics on character. None of these theories are perfect. None of them are on their own completely correct. But at the same time, none of them are completely false either. So when we look at them together, then we get to see and understand and evaluate the choices that we make in life. From the little decisions, should I go left or should I go right? Should I help the old lady cross the road? Should I not? To the giant ones, the giant global issues and so on. So these theories help us to understand and evaluate those choices. So it's definitely worth thinking about, even though none of the theories presented to you is the sort of be all and end all, the final answer, the final boss, so to speak. But it's important to understand the framework that you're using when you are thinking about things and trying to make decisions. So I do have an exercise for you before we go. And I just want you to write a paragraph or two answering this question. Which ethical theory do you think offers the best guidance for moral decisions, and why? So write a short paragraph or two. Just share which of those theories that you think offers the best guidance for those moral and ethical decisions, and why. So jump in the comments with that. I very, very much look forward to reading those. Whenever I do this exercise with people, the responses are fascinating. So if you have the time, once you've written your response, go and read other people's as well, because you will gain some insight just by viewing the way that other people think about things. So that's really it for our very brief introduction to ethics. And as you got this far, I'd very much appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel and all that good stuff. And that means that YouTube will show you more of my content, obviously, but also YouTube will recognize that, oh, this person, you, are interested in philosophy, and it will start showing you in your whatever the homepage is called, the browse page or whatever it's called, it will start showing you more people talking about these things, which will help you to widen your perspective and grow your knowledge and understanding of the world in which you live, which is surely a benefit to everyone. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, you won't regret it. In the next one, we are going to have a look into some of the history of philosophy from Socrates to Kant and so on. So I look forward to seeing you on that one, but make sure that you do actually complete that last exercise for this one, because that is really important, because it will help solidify your knowledge. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Goodbye.